entertaining talking sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to dive into Dave Gettleman. We're going to dive into the future of the New York Giants. We're going to dive into the remaining 13 games of the schedule and face the reality of the situation as New York Giants fans just 3 weeks into this short season. Coming into this year, I knew the Giants were going to struggle. I was trying to be optimistic when I said the Giants were going to win 6, possibly 7 games. I always knew in the back of my heart 4 games were very possible. And at this point, I would tell you 2 games is possible. I think 6 games is max. 2 games is possible because when you look at our remaining schedule outside of our division where maybe we could win 2, 3 games because it's not like the NFC East is playing well at all. Outside of that, I don't see us winning very many football games. I just don't. We play a very challenging schedule, and this team right now is not good. I took some positives the first 2 weeks, but when you really look at it, the New York Giants played a very fundamentally sound football game the first 2 weeks, and they still lost against teams that aren't world beaters, against good teams, but teams that aren't amazing. Yesterday was a complete embarrassment, and it wasn't an embarrassment because we lost. The 49ers still have a great head coach. They still have a team that knows how to win. They went to the Super Bowl last year. That's not the embarrassing part. It's the method in which we played. It's the way in which we lost. We were severely outcoached. We were severely out-executed, severely outplayed, severely out-hustled every step of the way. And some people said you can't blame the defense. The offense couldn't control the clock. No, it was a complete team effort. It was. We didn't force one punt. And the reason we only had 20-minute time of possession falls just as much on the defense as it does the offense. The defense couldn't stop them. They continued to get drives going, and we're not. They converted 3 third downs before the offense even touched the football. The offense was horrible as well. The whole team was horrible. Okay, it was one of the worst performances I've ever seen as a New York Giant fan. It just was, and I can only hope it gets better over these next 13 games, and that's what I'm going to continue to say. We have to hope that it gets better. I hope that Daniel Jones gets better, but the reality of the situation is, off of yesterday, it's completely reasonable to at least have some doubts about whether or not he's going to be the franchise quarterback. I'm also going to continue to say that we have to factor everything else in, that he had to learn a completely new offense. You tell me outside of Jared Goff how many quarterbacks did good in their second year when they had to learn a completely different scheme. So we have to factor all that in. We rushed Pat Shurmur out here. We had to realize by doing that it was going to force Daniel Jones to struggle. But he has certainly struggled, and I'm not going to make any excuses for him. Yesterday was probably his worst performance since he's been in the NFL, and he did it against a team missing 4 of their top 5 or 6 defensive players. So I can't make excuses for him from that aspect. Does he have help? No. Is the quarterback that we bring in if we move on from Jones going to have help? Probably not. The offensive line's still not going to be a finished product. Hopefully they're evolving and getting better. If we draft a quarterback, you're not going to be able to use that pick on a wide receiver, so on and so forth. And we have a lot of problems on that offense, and we have a lot of problems on that defense as it was displayed yesterday. I still think we need at least 2 playmakers to be able to do that, which is why I'm rooting for Daniel Jones to improve, and I hope he could potentially be the franchise quarterback going forward. But there's no guarantees right now. There's just not. If Jones gets a 3rd year, at least if you use that pick to try to improve the roster as is, and then he fails, you could then say to yourself, well, if we bring in a quarterback then, well, at least he's going to have a much better situation, and than what Jones inherited. But, and that's the same thing I'll say about the GM that is going to inevitably replace Dave Gettleman. And Dave Gettleman's not done a good job overall. I'm not going to say he has. People often ask me why I defend him. Well, I'll get into that in a second. Dave Gettleman has been a failure. He has. Unless this team goes on an unforeseen run, I was completely for getting rid of him last year when you could have gotten rid of him with Pat Shurmur. Now, why I stick up for Dave? Well, I thought he inherited a horrible situation, but he didn't make it much better. And the same thing for Daniel Jones. I thought he inherited a horrible situation, and I will wait to evaluate him until year's end. I think you need to give a quarterback at least 2 years, if not longer, before you could truly evaluate him. And I'm not even near the point where I'm talking about potentially replacing him, but he's got to get a lot better, and he's got 13 games to prove to ownership and to prove to the fans that we can put faith in him going forward, and hopefully he can do that. I don't know if he can. I'm not a fortune teller. I've seen spurts, and I've seen bad things, and we'll see. This is not a good roster. It's not the type of roster that could support any quarterback, really. If you bring in, yes, could some quarterbacks overcome it? Yeah, but you're talking about maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league that could overcome a roster this poorly and still be able to carry a football team. They don't grow on trees, and if you think Trevor Lawrence is that guy, he could be. It's a coin flip. I don't care how talented you think the guy is. People said the same thing about Rosen. They said the same thing about Darnold. They said the same thing about Jameis Winston. You go down the list. And what do those guys have in common? They had horrible rosters around them. And until such time, the New York Giants fix this roster, in my opinion, unless you're finding an Aaron Rodgers-like talent, which happens once every 15 years, and maybe Lawrence will be that, but maybe he won't. It's going to be a failure for the quarterback, and that's what bad organizations do, and that's what the New York Giants have done. They set the players up that they draft or they bring in free agency up for failure. That's what they did with Jones, and that's what the ownership did with Dave Gettleman. It's why I've tried to stick it out with Dave Gettleman, but I've come to the point now where my hands are up in the air, and I can't do it any longer. I just can't. And I hope whoever they bring in here does a good job, and I'll continue to support them as long as I possibly can. Why do I support Gettleman? Why do I want sustainability? Well, I'm a New York Knicks fan. I look at the New York Knicks. Since Jeff Van Gundy left the team, they've had 13 head coaches since 2003, none of whom lasted more than 2 years. That's how embarrassing it is. You're talking about all-time great coaches, too. You're talking about Lenny Wilkins. You're talking about Larry Brown, Mike D'Antoni, guys that had a lot of success. Mike Woodson lasted a little bit longer than 2 years. But they've had no sustainability. And I look at the New York Giants situation, and it's slowly starting to become that. If we move on from Gettleman, when we move on from Gettleman, because at this point I expect it, the New York Giants will now have had, since 2000 and, when did we fire Reese? 2017, we will now have had three GMs since 2017. Since 2015, we will have had 4 head coaches. We have 4 head coaches, rather, now with Joe Judge, and now people are already calling for his job. And we're continuing to flip this team over. And I personally believe until such time you have sustainability and continuity, you're not going to be able to get it going. But if guys can't get the job done, I understand moving on. I mean, you look at this roster right now, how many players do the New York Giants have on the roster that you could say to yourself, that's a franchise guy? Not many. Maybe 3. Maybe 4. We don't know yet. We have a lot of young players that are still developing. And to get them in, at least Gettleman's going to leave this team with some cap space, and you're not going to be riddled with a 37-year-old quarterback, which is what he had to take in when he became the New York Giants GM and a starving fan base. And I only ask that this fan base, whoever they bring in at the GM, gives him a real opportunity. And that's all I've ever asked with Dave Gettleman. And I gave him a real opportunity. I stuck up for him when I think he thought he deserved to be stuck up for. I can't stick up for him anymore. I can't do it. I am admitting that he didn't do a good job here. Do I think he got a horrible situation? Do I think he got dealt a horrible hand? Yes. He had no cap space. He had a 37-year-old quarterback. I could go down the list. But the fact of the matter is this. His drafts don't look as hot as they did, 2 or 3 years ago. They just don't. The team is not performing near to the point. And in the NFL, it is a short shelf life. And if the team doesn't start to show signs of growth, it's time to make moves. And it's time to shake things up. And that's what the New York Giants are going to do. And then you have to ask yourself, what approach are they going to take? And I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to bring in a GM completely from the outside? And is he going to be accepting of Judge? Are you going to make Judge? You can't give Judge more personnel, say, if they win 3 games this year. How could you sell the fan base on that? So then Judge is on the hot seat, and it's just going to create more and more turmoil and potential turnover. And if you bring in a rookie quarterback, say we finish with the first pick, and you bring in Lawrence, you have to go into that. You're expecting rookie results, which means you're not winning very many football games. Off the top of my head, I mean, I think 3 rookie quarterbacks in recent history have made the playoffs. And that's Dak Prescott, who came in as a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick, whatever he was. He inherited a great situation. And that's also RG3, who took the league by storm. And there's another quarterback that I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's very few and far between where rookie quarterbacks do a good job. So if you're rooting for Trevor Lawrence, or if you think we're going to be taking Trevor Lawrence, don't expect this team to be competitive till at least 2022. Now, the good news is for Lawrence is by next year, or for Jones, which is what I hope happens, we're going to have an offensive line that is better suited to support their quarterback. They should be growing. They should be more accustomed to playing with one another, and hopefully that improves. But, of course, if you take Lawrence, which is what the new GM would do if we had the first pick, you're not going to be able to use that first pick to improve the other holes on this roster. So, right now, the New York Giants are in a really tough spot, and there's really no good path outside of Jones becoming that franchise quarterback, in my opinion. If Lawrence becomes the guy, that's great, but there's no guarantees. Anybody that says it's a guarantee is lying. There's no guarantees. Sam Darnold was a guarantee. Josh Rosen was a guarantee. Jameis Winston was a guarantee. There's been so many guarantees. You look over the course of history, over the first overall picks, which is what Lawrence would be, a lot of them haven't worked out. Sam Bradford didn't really work out. None of them have won Super Bowls. The last number 1 overall pick at the quarterback position that won a Super Bowl was Eli Manning. So I'm still rooting for Jones to get better and to prove that he could be the franchise quarterback. But I'm not going to lie to you and tell you guys that I know for sure that he is, and that I haven't been discouraged with the way he's played specifically this week. Just got to hope he gets better. Got to hope the team improves. But if they don't, yeah, I'm going to tell you guys the reality of the situation. You're looking at a new GM, and you're potentially looking at a new quarterback. And you got a head coach that'll be on the hot seat entering his second season. Got to hope we get better, guys. Got to hope we grow this year. But right now, it's tough to be a New York Giant fan. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.